Good afternoon, my YouTube viewers. It is Palestine here. Welcome to my channel. So basically, the video that I'm making today is a rather impromptu video. But all of my videos really are impromptu or ad-lib because I don't speak from a script. I just speak from what's on my mind and try to speak from my memory. So, but basically, my boyfriend had to get up early this morning to go deliver leaflets because he's got a job at another company. And so this was his first week, and so he delivered leaflets today. So that meant I was home by myself, and I decided that I was going to go to Sainsbury's on my way to the Depression Expression coffee morning. And so I went to Sainsbury's, and then when I went to Sainsbury's, I was walking down the road to the biscuit factory to go to the coffee morning, and I saw this homeless girl. I've seen her before, and I think I even spoke to her one time. And I think she said that her mother had died, and when her mother had died, she got turfed out of the house, and the council didn't feel any responsibility to house her. So she was made homeless, and I believe it was her mother had died. And I've seen her around. She's been around for a few years. She's now skin and bones. She's probably using drugs as well. And the reason why I say that is because she was hanging around this guy who was Afro-English, and he was begging for money and asking for money too. And I do believe he probably was using drugs or alcohol or something because he was asking for money. I haven't seen him in a long time. He was riding the bus, asking people on the bus for money, and I wouldn't give him any money. I knew who he was because he had frequented the handouts, and he was asking people for money at handouts. And one thing that I don't understand is why in God's name are you going to go to a handout and ask people for money? Because people at handouts are hard up. They haven't got any money. But that's what he was doing. He was going to handouts, asking people for money. So I saw this girl hanging around with him. Haven't seen this guy in a long time. I don't know what's happened. I don't know if he moved out of the town. I don't know if he was put in prison. I don't know if he took a drug overdose. I don't know what happened, but I haven't seen him. And then she's on her own now. I've seen her with other homeless people before. And all of these homeless people, they've all got a story. There's even homeless people in wheelchairs in the town I live in. If you can imagine that the council and the town I live in doesn't even feel any responsibility to house disabled people. So she saw me. She probably thought I was a soft touch. I wasn't with my boyfriend. I was on my own. She asked me if I would buy her food. And I said, yes, certainly, I'll buy you food. At least she wasn't asking for money. But I said, certainly, I'll buy you food. So we went into KFC. I'm sure that she picked the most expensive meal. Here's my receipt from KFC. And it was a boneless box meal, where you get a boneless ML, a regular fries, a regular gravy, a regular Pepsi Max, a dip supercharge, I don't know what that is, a one-piece ALC. Oh, and that was $10.49. This boneless box meal was $10.49. And then she asked, could she have a chicken leg? That was £1.99. And then I had to pay VAT for that. That's value-added tax. And that was £2.07. And then it was to go. So the total of it was £12.48. And the woman at the till said that she knew who she was. She asked me, did I want a receipt for my records? And at first I said no, but then I said, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and take a receipt. And I thought, well, since I've got this receipt, I may as well make a video on the fact that I had to buy lunch for a homeless person. That was £12.48 lunch for this homeless person. I don't get to spend £12.48 for my lunch. As a treat, my boyfriend and I, we go to Mr. T's, and they have a £4.99 lunch meal where you get a wrap and a drink. We get that. We get a wrap and a drink, $4.99 lunch meal, and that's supposed to tide us over till nighttime. But I went ahead and paid this £12.48 because the girl is skin and bones. I think she's probably doing drugs as well. The council doesn't feel any desire to house her. I think that her mother has died and she got turfed out of the house. And I probably would do it. If I had been made homeless, I might do drugs too. You never know, because my boyfriend was telling me that if he got made homeless, he would start doing drugs. So you never know what you're going to do when you're homeless. And definitely being homeless is going to make you mentally ill. It's not a very nice situation to be in. But this made me think about the current situation that we're living in, the town I live in. I live in the largest town in the UK, and the government won't make it a city. One of the reasons why they won't make it a city is because they don't do enough for homeless people. And that's correct. That's absolutely correct. This council, which is supposedly a Labour-run council, doesn't do enough for homeless people. Like Oxford, which is a city that's really close by. You can take it on the train from my town. Oxford has a homeless shelter. And this town I live in, it's the largest town in the UK, is certainly big enough to have a homeless shelter. There have been homeless shelters in the past set up by charities. And so there was this charity called the Way Ministry, and she set up a homeless shelter. And it was not far from the bus station, the bus depot. And then basically something happened. I don't know what happened, but something happened. And so this homeless shelter was no longer with the Way Ministry, but then it was taken over by Faith, which is another charity. So this homeless shelter was taken over by Faith. And then I don't know what happened. I guess what happened was they ran out of money, or they ran out of funding, so they had to close the homeless shelter down. And so that was the only time we've ever had a homeless shelter in this town, and it was set up by a charity. And there's this lady called Grace Gomez. She is the founder and a trustee of the Way Ministry. She is the one who set up this homeless shelter. There's no more homeless shelter. It went for a few months. For a few months, homeless people were able to get out of the cold, but there is no more homeless shelter. And then so we've had a recent spate of deaths in the town of homeless people. There was one man who was homeless, and he was over there across the street from the bus depot, and apparently he got drunk. And he sat down in a chair drunk and went to sleep, and he froze to death. And then there was another woman that she sat at her tent on the high street. I'm not going to say the name of the street, but she sat at her tent on the high strip, and I guess she froze to death too. There was an incident with this guy with Down syndrome. He's homeless. How does it happen that the council does not even feel the need to house somebody with Down syndrome? So this is recently in the news, you had someone with Down syndrome, and the police, I believe it was the police, took his teddy bears away from him. So it was in the newspaper. This guy with Down syndrome was all distraught because I think it was the police, but they confiscated his teddy bears. How can you do that? How can you do that? How can you take a teddy bear away from someone who has a mental disability, who has a definite learning disability? How can you take that guy's teddy bear away from him? And he's homeless too, you know? And then there's another man that he's from Nigeria, and he goes to the handouts. And basically, he has a house in the town I live in, but his wife is Nigerian. And apparently, there's this scam going on where these Nigerian women are marrying men just to get their house. And that's what she's done. She's married him, and she said that he was abusing her or something, so he cannot even go into his own house, so he's living in his car, and I think there's going to be a court case. So you have a plethora, and I don't even know if that's the correct word, but you've got a plethora of homeless people in the town I live in, and they're all homeless for one reason or another. And the council that we live in doesn't have a homeless shelter, doesn't feel any need to house these people. And whenever with the person, I posted on Facebook, and I think it was about the person with Down syndrome that had his teddy bear taken away from him. I said, we need a homeless shelter in this town, but the council won't put up a homeless shelter. The reason why the council won't open a homeless shelter is because they don't want to attract homeless people to the town. And then somebody replied to my post saying, yes, because when these homeless people come to the town, they become residents of the town, and then the council is obliged to house them. So the council that I live in doesn't want to house homeless people. This is not a conservative council. This is a labor council. This is a labor council that is not housing homeless people. And labor is supposed to be so caring and sharing. Well, it's not. It may have been caring and sharing a few decades ago, but it's not caring and sharing now. Now it's just like a mini conservative party. They've carried on austerity. They've carried on conservative party policies. And so this Labor Party that is in control of the council of the town that I live in is not housing homeless people. They are not opening a homeless shelter. And Oxford, which is like one of the nearest cities, has a homeless shelter. So some of the homeless people who don't have any ties to this town actually go to Oxford so they can get into a homeless shelter in Oxford, because we don't have any homeless shelters in this town, being the largest town in the UK. It is pathetic. And then so basically, I see a lot of homeless people because I have to go to handouts because I'm destitute. I don't have £12.48 to buy a KFC meal for myself, but I bought a KFC meal for this homeless people. That's not something that I can do every day. I don't have £12.48 for myself to eat lunch. So, I'm doing without. So I'm going to buy lunch for a homeless person. And I was speaking to my boyfriend, and he just said, because, he's the one that's politically minded, not me. He said that, when reform comes in to power, he said that there's going to be the number of homeless people, the number of people going to handouts is going to double. And so another thing is that, you think you got it bad now under a labor council. Wait till these people who don't know very much about politics, don't know very much about society, just vote in reform. And while I'm on the topic, there was something on LinkedIn this morning. There was something on LinkedIn the other day, and there was something on LinkedIn this morning. The other day, there was something on LinkedIn about Nigel Farage being the leader of the Reform Party, taking 5 million pounds from a crypto billionaire. And this was a gift. This was a 5 million pound gift. It was personal money. It wasn't money that was donated to the party. It was money that was donated to Nigel Farage. And Nigel Farage took that money. And it said yesterday or today on LinkedIn, Nigel Farage said that he was given this 5 million pounds as a gift because he rallied for Brexit, to get Brexit out of the EU. And then another thing that happened, and I did vote for Brexit because I didn't know very much about what was going on, but he conned all of these people into voting for Brexit. And so basically, a lot of these towns and a lot of these councils were giving funding by the EU to build up the town, to make something of the town. Well, when Brexit came into being, all these towns that had been given funding by the EU had lost their funding. So these towns don't have any funding. If you look in the town that I live in now, all of these businesses, all of these shops are just shut down. All of these businesses are just closed down because they're no longer being given funding to actually build up the town. So Nigel Farage got this 5 million pound donation from a crypto billionaire living in Thailand for the good work that he did with Brexit. And then so basically now there was something else on LinkedIn saying that in 2025, when Nigel Farage became the leader of the Reform Party, he was saying that if people voted for reform, taxes were going to go down. That's what he said. He said taxes were going to go down if people voted for reform. Well, now, 1 year later, in 2026, now he's saying that taxes are going to have to go up. So all these people who voted for reform believed they were going to have less taxes. Well, they're not going to have less taxes because today, in 2026, Nigel Farage is saying that taxes are going to have to go up. And then so basically there was this interviewer, there was a journalist who interviewed him, and he said, well, how come in 2025 you said taxes were going to go down? And Nigel Farage said, well, I never said that. I never agreed to that. I never put my name on that. And they gave him a leaflet with his picture on it that saying, well, this is what it says right here. He said, I never agreed to that. I never agreed to lower taxes. And then, so you're not going to have, if you vote for reform, you're not going to get lower taxes like you think you're going to get, because now Nigel Farage is saying taxes are going to have to go up. Well, if the services are being decimated, which is what Reform Party wants to do, in addition to Conservative Party, if the services are taken away, why do you need to increase taxes? The taxes are supposed to be there to provide services. But if the government's not providing the services, which is their vision is not to provide services, to let charities step in and provide the services. But we saw how that went with the homeless shelter. Didn't we see how that went with the homeless shelter? A charity, the Way Ministry, opened this homeless shelter, and then for some reason, Faith Ministries took it over, and within a couple of months, they lost funding for the homeless shelter, so they had to close it down. So you see, that's what happens when the government says they're not going to provide any services and they rely on charities to take over the services. The charities will provide the services as long as they have funding. When they no longer have funding, they can't provide the services. And then charities also rely on volunteers. So basically, who's going to volunteer for a charity? Someone that doesn't need the money. They're either going to volunteer because they've got a day job and they just want something to do at night, or they're going to volunteer because they don't need the money. Yeah, so these charities are relying on volunteers who don't need the money because they're not going to be paid. And so that's another issue. And then so we're just in a dire situation, and it goes back to reform as well. So Nigel Farage, he organized Brexit, got everybody to vote for Brexit. We voted for Brexit, and then because we voted for Brexit, we lost our EU funding. And because we lost our EU funding, that means all of these towns and cities that had been given funding from the EU to build out that city, they lost that funding. So now these cities are falling in, and towns are falling into disrepair. And so now on the high street, you've got all these buildings, all these businesses that are shut down and had moved out of the town. And then, and now after he got us to vote for Brexit so we could lose our EU funding, now he's trying to get us to vote for reform. And what reform wants to do, one, they're not going to lower taxes like they said they were going to lower taxes. They're actually going to raise taxes, because in 2026, Nigel Farage says they need to raise taxes. And I saw it on LinkedIn today. And in addition to that, they're going to dismantle the health service. And so when they dismantle the health service, that means your health is going to be insurance-based. The people who are going to suffer the most are the poor people, because the poor people are not going to have insurance to pay for their health care. So that means they're just going to get sick and die. And then they want to do something about the illegal immigrants. Okay, I don't like illegal immigrants either. I mean, something definitely needs to be done about illegal immigrants, but there's so many bad things about the Reform Party that can't another party do something about illegal immigration? So I think that's basically the crux of what I wanted to talk about. How, even though I don't have £12.48 to buy lunch for myself, I bought lunch for a homeless person. There's no homeless shelters in the town I live in to actually house these homeless people. So they're wandering the streets asking for money. This person just asked for food. She didn't ask for money. She asked for food. So I bought her some food, but I didn't know it was going to cost me £12.48. So the next time she approaches me and asks for food, I hope my boyfriend's there, because I'm going to tell my boyfriend, I said, it's your turn. And it's just the town we live in. It's just, they won't make it a city because they don't do anything for homeless people. And it's the truth. They don't do anything for homeless people. They just let them wander the streets, asking for money, asking for food. They won't open a homeless shelter because they don't want to attract homeless people to the town. But there's homeless people already in the town. So the government won't make them a city because they don't do anything for homeless people. So it's just a circle. It's just a circle. They're just going around in circles. And then if we get in the Reform Party, our situation is going to be so much worse. You're going to have more homeless people, and you're going to have more food handouts. And then in addition to that, the Reform Party wants to model itself on the American system. The American system is generally survival of the fittest. If you don't have any money, they're not interested in you. And that is what's going to happen with the Reform Party. So they're going to dismantle the health system, make it insurance-based. So poor people aren't going to be able to afford to buy insurance. So they're going to be the people that don't get medical treatment that they need. So I think I've said enough. I've talked for close to 25 minutes about this, about having to buy lunch for a homeless person. I paid more for her than I paid for my lunch. My lunch cost £4.99. And because I got a wrap and a drink on a lunch special at Mr. T's. And I would never dream of spending £12.48 for a lunch for KFC for myself. But I bought it for her. And I don't have £12.48. I mean, so The government, the council should be housing this woman. The council should be giving her money so she can go out and buy her own KFC and she doesn't have to ask me for it. So that's it for my video. I think I've covered everything. If you like my video, please like and subscribe. And it means so much to me that you take an interest in my life, as pathetic as it may be.